Sean Mize here with Bob Thibodeau. And boy, I tell you what, I am absolutely delighted that Bob, you are willing to join me today. You and I have had a few conversations over the years where you have shared some things that when I hear it, I go, wait a second, this should be about you, not me, because what you are sharing can be amazing inspiration for thousands and thousands of people, many of whom are my clients. And so today, I want to be able to share that story with people whose lives can be changed, and don't allow that to be a whole lot of pressure. But Bob, welcome, and thank you so much for being willing to do this with me today.
It was my pleasure, Sean. I mean, you've been an inspiration to me through, this whole last several years, from where I started to where we got now. I give all credit to you because, you're the one who didn't force me into it, but it's like, well, have you done this? Oh, no, never thought about that. So it's like you were the inspiration behind everything that's happening online, including with the radio station and the podcast and everything else. This was all, more or less a motivator from you for me to go ahead and get it done. So I do appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. But let's dig into you. And here's the thought that comes to mind. When I think about what's gone on with you, and I think about your entire journey and what God called you to do a few years ago, just absolutely amazing. When I look at it, I have an amazing amount of respect and admiration for what you've built. And yet, when I talk with you about it, we've talked about it in private situations before, you're just so very humble. And I think in talking about it, little iterations kind of pop out. And would you be willing to just kind of start at the beginning with what led you to the place that you started your amazing podcast? And by the way, what's the main URL for that big podcast?
For the podcast itself is kcrpodcast.com. The podcast hosting company that we just love, the Christian podcast hosting company, is faithcasters.net. You have that down at the bottom of the picture. The radio station is evangelismradio.com. So that's the three main things that we got going. As far as starting from the beginning, real quick, growing up, all I ever wanted to do was be in the military. And 10 days after I graduated high school, that's where I was, basic training. I enlisted as soon as I could in the 12th grade, and I loved it. I even loved basic training, as weird as that sounds. But that's all I ever wanted to do, is make that a career. Accelerated fairly quickly through the ranks because I was that dedicated. And back in the mid-'80s, I decided, I was going to go ahead and go the commission route because a little bit more for retirement income. So I went down that route. No sooner did I raise my right hand for getting the commission, I was commissioned in the cavalry. That's the sign up there. Then they just started talking about, well, we got too many people in the military. We're going to have to start cutting back. And the way the promotion system was set up, I had it timed out where I'd never have to make major. As long as everybody made captain, as long as I could make captain, then we could go ahead and retire it with a captain's pay. There's 2 promotion possibilities for captain, 6 months apart, and everybody made captain, just about, probably 95%. Well, I knew I was competing against ROTC and West Point Academy graduates in the June promotion board, so I knew I wasn't going to make that one, but I'd make the one in December. And I got called in the colonel's office in July, and he said, Bobby didn't make the list. I was like, no problem, sir. I got the next one. He goes, the Secretary of the Army canceled the next one. You have to go to personnel and pick up your clearance papers. You're out of a job. And it was that quick. I had no notice. I had basically 10 days to prepare for civilian life with no backup plan. There was no backup plan. So that started a spiral downward, I guess you could say, personally. After a few years of kind of bouncing around job to job, I became a cop and loved that career. I was getting promoted and all that. And May 12th, 2007, I got hurt on the job. Between that day and this, I've had like 32 different medical procedures done. not crippled on a wheelchair or anything like that. I just can't chase bad guys anymore. And after after one procedure, and my legs all bandaged up, and sitting in front of the computer, unable to do anything at all. I was praying about what to do. I said, Lord, I'm getting too old to keep starting over all the time. And I thought, okay, well, start a weekly 30-minute online radio program. So I did. I didn't know anything about it. I had to have help checking email. Okay, I was not technically inclined at all. Still not. It's just repetition, basically. So we went through this, and I started getting a following. I'm like, wow, this is kind of cool. People are actually listening to this. And 3-4 months later, I got an email from a radio station conglomerate. And they said, we've heard your podcast. That's the first time I heard it called a podcast. So we've heard your podcast, and we'd like to know if you'd want to be on nationwide AM radio. And I'm thinking, yes, this is the plan, The catch was I had to pay for it. Just these little tiny details you got to factor into stuff. Well, we negotiated out. It was $600 a month for one 30-minute radio program once a week on like 4 different major markets, which was okay. I could afford that. They had already started talking about retirement, and the typical process of about a year to go through that. So I said, okay, no problem. Well, 2 months later, I got a letter in the mail. Congratulations on your retirement. You're living on half your pay. And now that $600 a month is a big chunk of change. And, but we had signed a contract, so we were doing it. And, a few months later, I was praying about the finances and all that. And it's like, are you having a hard time meeting your radio budget? I goes, oh, yes, blessing. Come on, blessing type thing, right? And I said, well, a lot of other ministries that I've called to preach on the radio, they can't afford it either. So start your own online Christian radio station, make it so affordable, no pastor can say they can't do it. I'm thinking, okay, I have no clue how to do this. But how much do you want me to charge? I said, I want you to make it free and make it so affordable, just trust me for the finances. So we started the process. It took us a couple of months to put the platform together. And there was a list of 10 things. My IT guy gave me 4 more of things that would be nice to have. And we tested 5 or 6 different platforms before we found the one that has all 14 items. And we've been with them now to 10 years. October 2010, the time of this recording is 2020. 10 years we've been with that same platform. Had maybe 2 days total in 10 years where they had to do maintenance on the servers or something like that. And we weren't on. But other than that, we've been going 24/7 ever since. I started the podcast, the Kingdom Crossroads podcast, as a way to interview the broadcasters. And the first year, I don't even really count it as being part of the 4 years total of the podcast, because I do 2 and then maybe skip a month and do 1 more interview. And 3 months later, do 2 or 3. But then I got approached by a publicist, said, I have a Christian author who's releasing a book. Would you like to interview him for your podcast? Yeah, sure, not a problem. And that kind of has snowballed into what we're doing now, where I do 6-7 interviews a week right now, where the actual full-time podcasting journey for KCR podcast has been 3 years. We're now just entering the 4th year. I've got over 700 episodes. I've interviewed 600 people in that 3 years time. So it is a full-time gig, I guess you could say. But, that is where we've come along that far. We don't have millions of downloads, but we're closing in on a pretty good number. Between the radio station, my programs on the radio station, where I have my own program, of course, and a live Sunday morning broadcast and all that. Between those episodes and the podcast episodes, I've got over 4,000 recordings that I've done in the last 10 years.
That's awesome. That's just awesome.
And so I have my radio voice.
Yeah. Oh, you do. Yeah. I don't think you're using your radio voice today. I thought something was off, and I didn't know what it was. It's that radio voice. Bob, here's what impresses me. I want to draw this out, because I think the audience for this is folks who have been, they're in the wilderness. You were in the wilderness for a while, where, just day after day, you were doing what was right. You were doing what you believed, but there was no breakthrough. And now you've got 4,000 recordings, thousands of downloads. all the downloads that happen every month. Your schedule's full now. Almost every single day, your schedule's full, for the podcast. And could you talk just a minute about what it was like to be in that wilderness for the 2 or 3 years where it was just kind of like, okay, I'm just doing what I'm supposed to, but I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, that was a lot of times. It was, you could do the Christian cliche, well, I just walked by faith and not by sight and all that. But a lot of it was because I couldn't do anything else. I was using a cane. I wasn't in a walker or wheelchair, but everywhere I went, I had to have a cane. And so just, you're basically more or less here. And the internet became my way of getting out, I guess you could say. But you're doing this, and you do an interview and you load the podcast, so it's published, and 5 people listen to it, and I was probably one of them because I downloaded it too. And it's so discouraging, but at the same time, I knew what I was supposed to do, and I was refining these steps, because the steps are the same whether you got 1,000 downloads or 10 downloads.
Mm-hmm.
The recording, the editing, the loading the server, all that, it stays exactly the same, step by step. It's just, when take, for example, the radio station. When we started that, I had one broadcaster, me, right? And, then at the end of the first year, we had 8. And I'm like, oh, man, this is fabulous, And the end of the second year, we had 20. And I'm like, oh, man, we're really flying now. At one point, I had 65 broadcasters sending me files every week that some of them needed editing, but all of them need to be, put on the server and managed, and the time schedule, if they're on at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you got to make sure that's the time slot that they're in, and not 8 o'clock or Wednesdays, so it's time conducive. But I learned that when it was just me and 1 or 2 others, how to do it, how to manage it. And so the process, although it seems like we were in a dry spell where nothing was manifesting, the offerings weren't coming in, we're pulling out of pocket for these expenses, and including the podcast. I started the podcast on a flip phone, talking on a free website where it will record. And it sounded like I was talking on a flip phone on a free website that recorded it.
Yeah.
But, over the course of time, it doesn't matter if you have a big studio microphone on a swing arm, with all this sound panel stuff we got behind, or talking on a flip phone on a free web. The process is still the same. And you just kind of plug it in as you go. If I would have started getting, 100 people wanting my services when I was only 2 months old, I'd have drowned. It'd have been impossible. And it's the same thing, like we've started the podcast hosting or the podcast training, which is really the inspiration that you gave me. Because I was like, well, how can I do this? I don't know anything about online marketing. I don't any of that stuff. And your guidance was, what is it people ask you help for all the time? And well, I always get asked, how can I start a podcast? By broadcasters, people, how can I start? And the same questions I was being asked as I was helping them, I was answering several times a week. Mm-hmm. So taking that guidance, I was like, well, maybe I'll start a podcast training program. Mm-hmm. I don't know how to do that. so and through the training that you provided, all the elements, one by one, they start falling into place. And, now I look back at it and I'm like, I should have done this 8 years ago, instead of 2 years ago. Now, mm-hmm. Even 2 years ago, it wasn't manifesting. We still weren't getting any clients, but the pieces were coming together. And that's the big thing. You start where you're at, just take it one step at a time, perfect that step, and then when necessary, someone would call me, well, how do I record remotely, where I'm away from my desk? How can I? Well, okay, I've done that with the radio station, so this is what you need. And then you start training them in that. But if you try and put all the pieces together at one time, there's some things that people may not even need. They never asked for, but you took 6 months to build out, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the coaching and the mentorship that you provided to me along this process really helped, you know. Just do this step and market it. And if somebody asks a question on another step, set that one up too, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we've really come a long way, because the wilderness journey, you know, the funny thing about the wilderness journey, I refer back to the story of Elijah when he went and told Ahab, you know, it's not going to rain till I say so. God didn't put his arms around Elijah and say, good job, boy, just take it easy now. You did what I told you. Great job. No, he put his arm around and said, run. All right. And he said, go out in the brook Cherith, because that's where I have already, I mean, the provision's already, I've already commanded the ravens to feed you there. Now he could have said, I'm not going down that road. No, I'm going to go. You know, I got friends, neighbors, family, a nice house, a soft bed. I'm going to stay. He could have stayed there, but he'd have been on his own because the provision was over there. Right. And that's the wilderness journey that I went through as well. Trying to find my footing in all of this was, I don't want to do this. You know, I want to have this. I want, you know, all this stuff happening. But you had to start here. You had to start at the very basics, where it was just me. Like, well, I want to do this. Well, that didn't work. Okay, how can I do this? That didn't work either. Okay, but once you found out, you know, someone wants to ask Thomas Edison, how many times different inventions you have for the light bulb? It's like 20,000 times, you know, in different versions of the light bulb till he found one that worked. I said, wasn't that discouraging? Why didn't you just quit? He goes, why would I get discouraged? I found 20,000 ways it didn't work. You know?
Mm-hmm.
In other words, don't do the same thing again. If it didn't work, forget about it. Find one that does. And that's basically how we built the radio station, the podcast company. You know, we're doing the podcast hosting platform for Christians right now, faithcasters.net. And I built that based upon what I learned with the radio station. You know, all that was the foundation of what we're doing right now. So it's, the wilderness journey is tough, but if you remain focused on going through the wilderness instead of camping out in the wilderness, it'll all work out in the end.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You know, we were talking, and well, first of all, I'd love to just touch on that wilderness journey for just a moment. And I think so often we have to go through that wilderness, as you know, because we're not prepared for the future without it. You made several references to the idea that you may only had 5 downloads. It was the same level of work as if you had 1,000, or even if you had 1 million downloads. But if you had 1 million downloads, you might not have been able to keep up with it. And if you had 1 million pastors asking to be on the show, you wouldn't know how to prioritize them.
Exactly.
You had to do it 100 times or 500 times until it became so comfortable that now, as demand is starting to build right now, and you're now at a full-time schedule, after the last 4 or 5 months, you're at a full-time schedule. You've launched faithcasters.net. You've launched the podcast training program. I've watched you for several years, Bob, and I'm just bursting with excitement over what you've done over the course of the last 4 or 5 months. I'm exceedingly excited about faithcasters.net. I'm really, really excited about that. I believe that it meets a powerful, powerful need in the marketplace, because Bible study providers, pastors, Christians who want to share things, and they want to have it on a separate place. They don't want to be in an environment where they don't know what the next thing is going to be streamed that is going to disagree with their views. And so it's just going to be the next thing on the show. And so they don't feel comfortable putting their material there. But folks can be confident that if they're working with you and they're working at faithcasters.net, that it's a special place, and that working with you, they're going to get special treatment. And I'm just really, really excited about that. I'm excited about that for you. And then I'm totally excited about the podcast. Now, you and I had kind of talked about the fact that 4, 5, 6 months ago, there was just a shift. Tell me about what's gone on in these last 4 or 5 months that has that has happened. I don't want to say to emerge you from the wilderness, because I just personally believe God's been in control of the whole thing, and God left you in the wilderness as long as you needed to be in the wilderness, and he moved you out when you were ready. But when we look at it in the natural, what are some of the things that have happened that have really snowballed things?
Oh, wow. So many things that have changed just in the past couple of years. The physically, and I don't say this boasting or anything like that. Remember, I said all the medical procedures I had and the surgeries and all that stuff. I was on 4 different pain medications for 6-7 years. 4 pain medications, 3 of them were at the maximum dosage allowed by the FDA. If they'd have given me 1 milligram more, it'd been considered experimental and not covered by insurance, right? And they told me, do not take these all at one time. Spread them out during the day. And every time I was taking like 4 or 5 hours apart, but every time I took one, 20, 30 minutes later, I had to go take a nap because it just take me off my feet.
Wow.
That was my life, right? So you're operating in a fog to begin with, trying to do all this technical stuff, and October of 2017, October 12th, 2017, I just decided I'm tired of being tired. And I do not recommend this. And disclaimer, talk to your doctor if this sounds like something you want to do. I decided on my own, I was just going to quit cold turkey, all 4 medications simultaneously.
That sounds life-threatening, Bob.
I had no idea I was that hooked on pain medications. For 7 days, I slept maybe a total of a half an hour to an hour. I would lay in bed at night trying to sleep, and my wife would have to wash the sheets and blankets the next morning because all I did was sweat all night long, right? I couldn't sleep. About the 4th day in, I had already as a pre-scheduled appointment with my doctor. And I must have looked pretty bad. Normally he's all jovial, walks in, hey, how you doing? He walked in, and excuse the French, he walked in and said, what the hell happened to you? Right? And I said, I just quit taking that medicine. He goes, what medicine? I said, the pain medication. Which one? All of them. And he said, are you crazy?
You're going to die.
Yeah. He said, you're supposed to come to me for that stuff. So I just made the decision I wasn't going to do it. I'm not taking it anymore. He said, well, let me give you a prescription. I'm not taking your medicine. He might give me a prescription for withdrawals and stuff. And I said, I'm not taking it. I stop, And about 2-3 days later, I started getting back into the normal rhythm. And really, and I can't attribute it all to that, but the clarity of mind and all the progress that you've seen also coincides just about with that same time frame. Where the podcast training program, I started putting that together about 2 years ago, and it was launched. So all this stuff really happened at the same time. But that, to me, that was the exit from the wilderness experience. And believe it or not, the pain level I'm experiencing on a daily basis right now is really at the same, I feel about the same as what I did when I was taking all the medicine, because my body had built up, where that was the normal. But I can, I'm out walking now 1.5 miles every day. I ride 5 miles on the stationary bicycle every day, and then we go take the dogs for a walk. So the Lord has provided me that opportunity to cleanse my body. And in the process, I had kept gaining weight because I wasn't able to do anything. I ballooned up to 280 pounds in October of 2017.
Wow, you're not 280 now.
No, I'm about 225, 226. My goal is to get down about 210.
Congratulations.
Right. So that makes me healthy. The blood pressure's down. All these things snowball, but in the right direction instead of the opposite direction.
Absolutely. You're a plotter.
So that also builds the business, because I can sit at the computer now, before, after about 45 minutes, all my back hurts, and I got to go take a pain pill, go take a nap, that's not like that now you talk about the processes of getting used to, the steps necessary to do it. I still have, like I said, 50 some broadcasters sending me files on a weekly basis. I'm building out the faithcasters.net platform, continually modifying that. I'm handling the podcast training. We're doing that. And, but I have 1, 2, 3 computers going simultaneously. And I'm over here loading the thing for the edits, and I come back over here working the website, and then I do, answer emails, something over here. Okay, this is right. I go back over here, do the, and my IT guy came in because he was going to update the operating system or something to current versions. And he came in and said, well, let me finish this. I'm click, 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 click. He goes, are you in a hurry? No, this is what I normally do all day long. He said, you got this down to an art. I said, well, after 10 years, you'd hope I'd have it down to an art, But yeah, that's exactly what you're talking about. Was the steps involved are the same, whether it's just me or 1 or 2 others or 50 people sending me their stuff. The steps are exactly the same. It's just a matter of knowing what the routine is. So.
Mm-hmm. So Bob, let me ask you this. You and I have kind of talked a little bit about the role that getting involved in LinkedIn 4 or 5 months ago had in, I don't want to say in the snowballing, because there's probably 10 different things that have come together, everything we've talked about today. But in some way, LinkedIn might have perhaps been an accelerant. Could you tell us about what happened when you began to dip more deeply into LinkedIn?
Well, for 2 or 3 years, I grew my contact list from 0 to like 210. And it took me like 3 years of doing that. And most of them I wasn't really in contact with. It's like, yeah, okay, but no real communication back and forth. And I believe it was November of 2019, late November, first part of December, you provided a training about LinkedIn, a hidden secret type thing. And I was like, well, okay, yeah, I'll try that process and see it, because Facebook wasn't working the way I wanted it to. And, I said, oh, okay, I'll try it. And within like a week, I had almost doubled my number of contacts.
Wow.
It just wasn't contacts. It was conversations. I mean, these were people that you're carrying on a conversation with. It might not be, an in-depth one like we're doing, but it's like, tell me what you're doing, type thing. And wow, how could I help? How, do you need anything from me? And just talking back and forth. And that was, we'll just say mid-December, right? Just for easy figuring, we'll call it the 1st of January of 2020. I may have been about 300 or 400, right, in contacts. As of today, which is, closing in on the end of March in 2020, so you're only talking 3 to 4 months time, I'm closing in on 1,000 contacts now. And, we're carrying on conversations. I've been interviewed on several different of their podcasts. I've had a lot of them lining up to be interviewed on my podcast. We're doing these mutual promotions for each other. Just before I came on this recording, I was talking with someone. We're putting together an online Christian podcast conference. So especially with what's going on right now in the world, although this is going to be later in the summer because I want to do it right and not just rush into something. But I mean, these are contacts that started on LinkedIn, because you're going to have the ones that get on there, like to be part of your network. Click, and next thing you know, you get this generic email. I can promote you to 2,000 people and all this stuff, and for $500 or whatever it is. And it's like, stop. But the conversations though. LinkedIn is like the hidden gem. I mean, it really is. That has accelerated. As you said, it's an accelerant. It has accelerated what we're doing. That's one reason why my schedule is booked. When I first started the podcast, it was a weekly podcast. Every Monday I'd post one, and then I would do an interview such as this, And I'd look at the schedule and say, okay, well, we're doing this in January. Your episode will be aired in May. I was like, some of these are book authors. They're doing book launches. That wasn't really fair. So I said, well, I'll do twice a week. I didn't put a dent in it hardly at all. So I went to 3 times a week. That cut it about in half. I said, well, I think it was you that said, do a daily one, go daily. So I said, well, I got the episodes in the bank already. Might as well, and that cut it down to about 10 days. Okay, that's a good number. Well, just in the past month, 5 weeks, something like that, I'm now 1 month out on what I have already in the hopper, and my schedule is still full. And you're the one who encouraged me to go down that route. And I won't go into details on all that stuff we talked about, but it's listen to Sean, folks. He's been around the block a few times. He knows what he's talking about.
Thank you. So I just think this is really impressive. And so basically in about 4 months, you've gone from about 220 connections to over 1,000 connections.
Yeah.
But
not over. We're approaching 1,000. Over 900. Over 900.
Over 900 connections now. But the key thing I think that's important is that the result has been you've built some amazing relationships with people who are inviting you to be on their show, and that this has accelerated you to get to the place where you're doing a daily podcast and you're booked a full month out now. You've got 30 days of literally 30 podcasts are in the hopper, and you attribute that last boost to these new relationships that you're building through LinkedIn. Am I hearing you correctly?
Probably 75%. Yeah.
75% boost, perhaps 75%.
75% of the podcast interviews that I'm doing right now are probably coming from LinkedIn. Yeah.
Okay. And you've only been using LinkedIn aggressively for the last
4 or 5 months. Yeah. 4 months. Yeah.
That just blows me away, Bob. And I'll tell you, it's strange to hear me say that myself, because obviously I know that it works. It works theoretically. It works for other people. It's an amazing way to build relationships. But it's like every single time that I talk with somebody that's actually done it and there's this huge real world result, it blows my mind. And here's why. Because probably for every 100 clients that I show them what to do with LinkedIn, only one person does it. And then of course, if you do it, you get that result. But it's still like, oh, wow. I'm just blown away by what you've done. But the thing is, it's so consistent that if you obviously you're not having to reinvent the wheel every week. You're just going, you're doing what you're doing. You've probably fine-tuned what kind of feeling that you get from somebody communicating, whether they really need help or not. So your time is more useful. But that's just something that comes from experience. Thanks for sharing that about LinkedIn. I think you and I have to wrap up. I made a commitment to keep it short, and I think for everybody listening, we want to keep it short. If there was one thing that you could offer folks in terms of advice, hey, what's the one thing that you would advise someone if they're kind of plodding along, doing what they're supposed to be doing, but they're not getting those results yet? What's one thing that you would offer?
Let me give them 2.
Okay.
First, hire Sean Mize as your coach and mentor.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you. What's number 2?
The second, keep going. It's one step in front of the other. I used to be a runner before I got hurt. I used to run races. I had trophies for my age groups and all that stuff. But the key to running was pace yourself and put one foot in front of the other. You can't just go bolting out the gate on a marathon thinking, I'm just going to run as fast as I can, as far as I can. Type thing. You'll die. I actually, a quick story. I did that in one race. It was a 5K race. Wasn't that many entrants. And I'm thinking, I'm going to try and win overall with this one. And I took off. And it was nice. For about 1.5 miles out of the 5K, I was leading the pack. It was so cool having the police car in front of me. escorting them. And I'm just huffing it just as fast as I can go. And after about a mile and a half, I start hearing footsteps behind me.
Mm-hmm.
By the 2.5 mile point, this guy is running right neck and neck with me, and I'm out of gas, right? And I think I end up finishing like 10th overall. I still won the age group, but that's just, you can't just go at this, whether it's online marketing business, information marketing, podcasting, whatever the case may be. You just can't go out the gate and say, here we go, we're just running for it, and I'll put it together as we go. Take it not slow, but steady. One step at a time. Put this piece in place, perfect it. That doesn't mean you got to have, as Sean will tell you, you don't have to have, if you're going to put together a 10-step coaching program, you don't have to have all 10 steps ready to go if it's going to take you a month and a half to train someone in those 10 steps. Get the first one set, begin work on the second one, because you may be working on something they don't need. They're not asking for it. They want this. So make that your second step. But the point is, one step in front of the other. Don't give up. Never quit. That was the man when I was a drill instructor in the Army. I tell them, as long as you're moving forward, we're good. Don't stop. Do not stop. If you're stuck on a particular spot, just don't quit. Just evaluate why you're stuck. It could be a technical issue. You just got to change platforms or something like that. But don't quit. Plan it out one step in front of the other and never quit. Always do something every day. You might only have an hour today to work on your platform. Spend it well. Don't be on Facebook looking around, answering posts and stuff like that. Take that hour. If that's all you're going to work on your program that day is an hour, work on it for 1 hour and then go on with your life. But do something every day and don't quit.
Awesome. Would it be okay if we talked about Faith Casters for just a minute?
Sure.
I'll tell you, I want to say to everybody that's listening, now you understand why I so desperately wanted to have Bob Thibodeau here, because his story is almost unreal. His story is the kind of story that you'd read in a biography of someone who has just tackled absolutely amazing things. To have 40 or 45 surgeries, to be
32.
able to 32 surgeries. How I heard 45, but 32 surgeries, and on 4 medicines amped up to their highest FDA approved level. Quit cold turkey, which could have killed him. Done just an amazing, absolute journey here that I have an incredible level of respect for Bob Thibodeau. Now, something that you've done recently that it really excites me to no end. And although everything that we've talked about today, I have great respect for, what really excites me is what you've done with faithcasters.net. And that should be on the screen there, faithcasters.net. I don't want to make this a big promotion because that's absolutely not what it is. But I think that this is a critical part of not just your journey, but I believe that you have opened the door for perhaps thousands or hundreds of thousands of pastors and lay people to have a unified platform where they can really begin to share what's inside of their heart. But I'd love for you, if you'd be okay, to share what faithcasters.net does and how it could really help somebody.
Okay. Like I said, I've been doing podcasting for going into 4 years, and I've been on 5 or 6 different platforms in that time. The one I'm on now, I have been on for 2 years, because you get on there and you just didn't like the way something worked. So you're looking over here, well, okay, I'll try this one, and you just move everything over. I came across Lee Dumas. And, in podcasting world, most people know who that is.
Oh yeah. Powerhouse.
So he is a former cavalry officer, as I was. And, his platform had the training, had the resources. I'm thinking, this will help me out in what I'm trying to do. So that's where I joined. We've been with that platform, podcast websites, for couple of years now. But there was the podcast movement conference coming to Philadelphia. And this would have been in July of 2018. January of 2018, my board of directors asked me, because we had the radio station, we have twice a year board meetings. And they asked me, well, what's coming next? You know, the radio station is growing, it's established. What's on the horizon? You know, what is next? And I told them about podcasting as the up and coming thing. I relate it where podcasting today is kind of like FM radio was in the 70s. You know, everybody loved it, but the only place you could get it was in the doctor's office in an elevator. It wasn't even in cars. Right? Mm-hmm. So that's where podcasting is today. And probably in the 80s. This 2020 is about where FM was in the 80s, put it like that. But anyway, they said, well, what would it take for us to make a major impact in the podcasting market, just as we did with the radio station? So I have no idea. Well, they told me to start researching it. So that's what we were doing. And John Lee Dumas was coming up to the podcast conference. He was having a little get together the night before the conference with just people associated with him. So I decided I'm going to go up. I'm going to get his idea on what we can do. And I stood in the background until he had some time to himself, you know, from talking, taking pictures and all that. And I walked up and I just dropped a quick CAV phrase that means absolutely nothing to anybody unless they were in the CAV. You know, I said it, his eyes lit up. He goes, CAV? He goes, yeah. I go, hey, you know, we started talking. And he says, so what are you doing? So I told him what we were looking at doing. And he put his arm around me and pointed across the room. Said, see that guy over there? That's Mark Asquith. He's the brains behind our whole operation, technical wise. He goes, go over there, tell him I sent you over there. I said, okay. So I went over and introduced myself to Mark Asquith, told Mark what we were doing. And his eyes lit up. We got something that I think will work exactly what you're trying to do. He said, after this conference, let's stay in touch. Well, starting that fall up until really this past month, we've been talking at least once a month on Zoom and things like that. And Mark Asquith basically built the platform that faithcasters.net is hosted on. He's the one who put together the framework, I guess you could say, of the website, and it is awesome. But Faithcasters was designed. One of the things I told our board of directors was every single podcast hosting platform in existence will lump Christian podcasters into a category called religion and spirituality. And you have, you know, atheists, agnostics, Hindus, Muslims, you know, Buddhism, everybody else is all in there together, but nothing is really, and that's okay. I'm not downplaying that at all, because these are for-profit companies. They're trying to make everything as simplified as they can for what they try to do. But there was nothing that was really marketing to the Christian podcasters or the Christian broadcasters. So we decided that's what we're going to build. And it took us 2 years, about a year and a half research and development, and 6 months to actually build out the platform and get it launched. And this is towards the end of March of 2020. We've actually only publicly launched about 2 weeks now. That's when I actually started the promotions and all that. And, you know, we've got half a dozen podcasters already signed up. I think seven or eight at the time of this recording. Okay. I got 2 or 3 more that are in the process of joining. But what we offer is as you said, a safe environment for the Christian podcaster, where they know we're not going to be promoting, you know, a podcast of, you know, bar hopping or anything, you know, like that. This is strictly designed for the Christian podcasters. And that is part of the agreement, the terms of service that people have to agree to, that if we find they're promoting something else, boom, gone. But that's unique to us. And all of the marketing effort, all of the advertising, all the promotions will be driving traffic to this website where their podcasts are advertised. So they can also get that traffic from other sources besides their own promotions. So that's what it's designed to do, is just strictly promote the Christian broadcasters and podcasters.
That's awesome. My heart swells to hear that. It really does, because you've met a need that's been available, that's kind of been out there, a hole in the market for a long time. Yeah. And mean, more than that, you're doing something that as this begins to grow, there's going to be a place where people can go to and be able to meet podcasters, be able to interview podcasters, be interviewed. And I'm going to say something, I don't know if this is out of line or not, and if I'm wrong, you correct me, but I'm thinking that because it's at the beginning stages, hey, you've got 7 or 8 podcasters, and you can count me in as being 8 or 9, okay? And in fact, in the back of my head, I'm thinking I've got 10 or 15 or 20 Christian clients that, and if you're listening to me, folks, I'm not talking to everybody here, but you should know who you are. If I say I've got 15 to 20 Christian pastor clients that should be on Faithcasters, you know who I'm talking about. Correct me if I'm wrong, but especially while it's small, before you've got 10,000, while it's small, it's a great opportunity to be noticed for folks that are in the podcast, to invite the other people to be on their podcast, and for you to get invited to other people's podcasts to maybe get on your podcast. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. My brain is just doing this right now. It's spinning at 1,000,000 miles a second right now. I'm thinking that if someone were to get connected at faithcasters.net and they reached out to you personally, say on LinkedIn or at Faithcasters, and they were nice to you, you'd probably take them by the hand and help them out a little bit. It would be possible. I'm trying to get my words together. This could actually make it possible for someone to be able to start their own podcast and maybe get to a podcast a day 20 times faster than you did because of your mutual connections, the people they'd be able to visit there. And really, if they went to your podcast and they went through and listened to podcasts and they said, wow, this guy likes being interviewed, I like his message, I could call him up. Literally in a really short period of time, if someone has had on their heart they need to do a weekly or a daily podcast, somebody could get up and running very, very quickly. And in this time that we live in right now, where people can't even go into a church building right now and gather, this would be the type of time where something like this could just grow exponentially in a very short period of time, because people, it may not happen this week, but in a few weeks, people are going to be desperate for a good message. They're already getting tired of 24/7 fear mongering on the media. Mm-hmm. But if someone were to take action right now and start a new podcast, and there's plenty of time now in people's lives to interview folks. Boy, am I going too fast with this, Bob?
No, you're spot on. You know, the thing about it is that this platform is designed as a networking and advertising platform. You know, and you come on and you see the different podcasters who are on there, you reach out to them, you know, they'll put you on, they'll interview you, or, you know, you want to interview them, they'll do that too. You know, that's the same thing. So yeah, you're right on that this would be a great networking opportunity. In addition, because of my ministry with the radio station and the podcast, they're basically seamless, as well as the podcast training. If you look at all the different platforms, they look almost exactly alike, and there's links to all of them. You know, if you were on the radio station and you're going to spend $50 a month, I'll just pick a number out of the air, $50 a month to be on the radio station, you're going to go over to Faithcasters and you're going to, you know, spend $30, $40 a month to be on Faithcasters. If you want to combine the two, there is a program there for that at $79 a month. That includes, you know, me helping you out with the editing. You know, I'll load you to the radio station. You're going to be on the podcast. All these things are combined. Why? Because this thing works seamlessly, and that's the way it was designed to do. So yeah, the opportunity they have is not just, you know, I'm not going to go down that road. I was going to talk about how expensive AM radio is, but I have one pastor. He has a 1-minute broadcast during drive time, 5 days a week. He spends $800 a month on traditional radio. You know, that's expensive. But
that's expensive.
But
Well,
that's where we're at with this. But no, the faithcasters.net is a networking, hosting, and marketing platform for podcasts. If you don't have a host, we can hook you up. If you have a host and you're happy with them, you can stay right with them and just market and network through the platform. So yeah, and if someone wants to do an interview, there's a link right there where you can contact me and do an interview. And what happens is when you do these interviews, it's just like on LinkedIn, you're being exposed to the people who follow me. Then some of them will start following you. I interview you, and some of the people that follow you ended up following me. That's the whole purpose of networking, is building your network. So absolutely, I appreciate that.
Bob, that's awesome. Well, we're way, way, way over time, and you and I could talk for another hour because I'm just brimming with ideas about how folks can use LinkedIn combined with podcasting, and then if they're in the Christian space, faithcasters.net. I am just brimming with ideas, and I'm really excited. So I think we just got to make an executive decision here that we've gone over. We've both got a lot of work to do today, and we'll call it quits. Bob Thibodeau, I just want to extend an amazing level of thanks to you for taking time out of your amazingly busy week to share with my tribe your journey, because I genuinely believe that for someone who has listened to everything that you've talked about today, this is an amazingly inspiring journey. And I truly believe that anybody that's listening should get some level of motivation and inspiration out of this that tells them, yes, that it's time for such a time as this. All of the technology is there, that if somebody wants to make the impact that perhaps God has called them to do sometime in the past, or that they've had burning inside of them, that they've been waiting and waiting for the perfect time, can I be so bold as to say, this might be your perfect time? Thank you very much, Bob.
Amen. I appreciate it, Sean. Appreciate all the motivation and inspiration you've given me as well. It's paying off.
Well, you're very welcome, and thank you for sharing that with me.